Oh, hello. Come in. Pull up a chair. Sorry, the place is a bit sparse at the moment. I'm moving out in the morning. Downsizing, they call it. Well, you know how it is. Or do you? So you got your camera all set up. So, do you want to hear about my last case? Well, get your iPad out. You got it? Oh, and by the way, it's Detective Jardin. That's Jardin. So, let's start at the end, because that is a good place to begin.
Oh my god. So I was talking to Tracy about Siobhan. Yeah, you know she's had him. Twins! I know! Oh my god. Yeah, oh my god, right. So I feel like I'm having twins at the moment after that Christmas. So much Yule log and all the Jen and Slim. Anyways, so I'm out doing my hour exercise at the moment. And it is so pretty here, Michelle. Like, hold on, let me just put you on FaceTime, I'm going to show you, hold on. Look, so you've got all these trees, like they're so nice. And then, like, there's just this lake here, it's so pretty. Wait, what's that? What, is that a, oh my god,
Do you remember it? Well, that story on the internet about a year ago about a young woman, Tamara Jubilee, found dead in a lake. They found the rope around her neck. She'd been strangled. Well, I was on the team that discovered the body, and we arrested her husband for doing it, as we found his DNA on some skin cells left on the rope that had been used to strangle her. Well, we thought this was all done and dusted until a couple of months later some new evidence came to light that threw a bit of shade on his case. So I was called back in as an investigator to do some investigating. Well, as you can see, times are hard, so I took the case. Now, let me take you back to where a letter arrived at my door.
On behalf of the Constabulary Services in Thames Valley, we would like to employ your services in the case 458934, where upon the discovery of some new evidence has thrown a different light on the case. Please investigate and report your findings. I enclose a link to a website where we have uploaded what was found at www.thamesvalley.gov, file 0022345. Please click on the link and log in with the details below. We have you on detainer, so your usual fee will be issued. Signed, Chief Inspector James, Thames Valley Police.
So I logged into my machine, clicked on the link, and found this. A report of the crime scene. A toxicology report stated they'd found lake water in her lungs, along with small traces of rat poison in her blood, and estimated she'd been dead for 3 to 5 days. A rope that was found round her neck. A mark or puncture wound on her wrist. And a fragment of cloth that was found under her fingernails. There was a FaceTime video taken by the lady who had discovered the body, and a link to the BBC website where the story had made front page news. I was asked to take another look at the case, so I did, and followed it down to some very dark places. But hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. First of all, I thought I would call up an old friend of mine in the forensics department, just to clarify some details.
Colin Ramsbottom.
Colin!
Oh, is that Tom?
Hello, mate.
Not heard from you since you got your promotion.
I know. Inspector now.
Well, you deserved it after putting that monster away.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Who was it again?
Stone.
That's it. Yeah, horrible piece of work.
He was. I see him. Well, Tamara Jubilee, who I'm calling about. The new evidence? Have you managed to look at it?
Oh yeah, hang on a moment.
Oh, thanks. So this mark on her wrist.
Well, it looks like it's a watch mark, as you can see where the glass was dug in.
A watch?
Looks like it's been pressed in really hard, like someone's held her wrist really tightly.
Oh, nasty. What about the rat poison?
Yeah, we found some of that in her bloodstream. Not a lot though. Not enough to cause any damage. I mean, she may have just picked it up naturally.
So you do definitely think it was him?
Well, we found his DNA on the rope, so that's pretty damning. Although why he didn't wear any gloves, God only knows.
You would have thought.
Amateurs, eh?
Colin!
And with the new evidence of the rat poison, he could have put a different light on it.
But you don't think it did?
Unless this watch turns up, no.
Okay then. And what about the black strand of cloth?
No match so far. I'll keep looking. Anyway, I've got to get back to sawing up Mrs. Beecham. Seems she managed to catch herself in the rotor blades of her strimmer.
Oh, I'll leave you to it.
Right. Very well. Bye for now.
I now had a bit more information about the new evidence, so let me just take you back to my first few interviews. Sometimes it's good to take another look, as there could be something that was overlooked at the time. I started by paying a call on the grieving parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jubilee. Mr. Jubilee?
Colonel.
Apologies, Colonel. I'm Detective Jardin. I'm so sorry for the loss of your daughter.
Thank you. It was a terrible shock, and these last 6 months have been very traumatic for me and my wife.
I totally understand, sir.
So why are you here?
There's some new evidence that's come to light, so I would like to go over some details with yourself and your good lady.
I thought that bloody man was in prison for this, and the blasted case was put to rest. We've been through hell and high water, and my wife has only just started to recover.
I understand, sir, but just a few moments of your time.
Oh, very well. You better come in then.
Thank you, sir.
Why the bloody hell did Bertram have to take the day off?
Bertram? Bertram, will you come and pour the tea?
He has the day off, dear, and Mrs. Fitting is on holiday.
Oh, well, that explains why you brought this gentleman in. I suppose I will have to do everything myself. Tea?
Ma'am, if you don't mind.
Sugar?
Oh, no, thank you, ma'am. Trying to, Ma'am, I realise you've been through this before, but...
Here you are.
Thank you, ma'am. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you some more questions.
I'm very sorry, officer.
Inspector now, ma'am.
Inspector. But I have been over these events with the police many, many times, and I am very tired of saying the same thing over and over again.
I understand, ma'am. It's just that new evidence has come to light, and even though we do have Mr. Stone in custody, it's raised a few issues to do with his case and therefore his guilt.
Yes, well, I know he did it.
You know?
Of course. I used to be an actress, so I'm very good at reading people. I could just see it in his face when they first got married. I could tell there was something wrong about him.
Wrong?
But he just had a look about him. I wasn't sure, but I knew something was wrong. I just knew it.
Go on.
I'm sorry, Inspector. It's very traumatic, bringing all this up again.
I totally understand, ma'am.
So, when they had this enormous falling out, followed by the start of this divorce proceedings, I could tell he had a plan. Just a look in his eye. If only I'd done something sooner.
I can assure you that no intervention from yourself would have made a difference. If someone wants to commit a murder, then there's nothing you or I could do or say to change their mind. They're dead set. I should know. There is a coldness, a ruthlessness, and in this case...
Enough, please, Inspector.
Can I ask, did Tamara ever wear a watch?
No, she hated the things. Although she could have done with one, as her tardiness was legendary.
Could you take me back to a conversation you mentioned in a previous interview? A conversation you had with your daughter? It was just after she had separated from her husband and came back to live with you. Do you remember?
Oh, yes. And she was in a foul mood.
I'm not going back to him.
I know, dear, but you can't stay here, not indefinitely.
I know, I just need time to sort myself out.
Well, you better hurry up and sort yourself out. You know, find someone else. The clock is ticking. You are 40 after all, and you can't keep hanging around with that girl.
I'm 37. You don't even know how old I am, and anyway, her name is Laura.
Oh, she's a...
lesbian, Mother. Yes, they're a lesbian.
Well, as long as you and her are just friends and she's not trying to convert you.
Oh, don't be stupid. She's not trying to convert me. Anyway, you do know it's not a choice. It's who you are.
It's disgusting. Look, I do care. I've just got used to you not being here, that's all. You know, it's fine that you come round here for birthdays and Christmases and the odd visit, but not all the time. It's been months.
It's been 3 months, and 3 horrible months at that. But whatever, I'm not going back to him.
I know, dear, we've been through this 100 times. She's a whore, blah, blah, blah. And he's been seen seeing that other woman.
What other woman?
Miss Parrish.
Miss Parrish? What, your accountant? No, she's
another one. Men going in and out of her office each day, every day. Even your husband. Oh yes, he was frequenting that office far too often for my liking. And even at your wedding, he was just dancing with your chief bridesmaids just a little bit too close.
I know, and I spoke to Paula about that, and she said it was just a dance and that I was being paranoid.
Well, you are a little bit, aren't you?
Thanks, Mother. Thanks very much. Did you know that I found texts from her on his phone?
Texts, dear?
Yes, texts.
So what did these texts say?
Something like, can't wait to see you again. The last time was amazing.
And this was from the accountant, Miss
Parrish.
Miss Parrish.
Oh no, not from her. From that McDade woman.
McDade?
Yes. She was that woman who molested Tamara's husband at the wedding. Little trollop. She has 5 children. 5. They breed like animals.
So he was having an affair?
Well, you better speak to her. I'll have the address forwarded to you.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Just a final question.
Very well.
You are the owner of Jubilee Diamonds?
We are.
So why do you not have the entrapments of the finer life?
You mean, why are we living here? In this squalor?
Yes.
It's temporary, I assure you. The house is being refurbished after the inheritance was settled.
From your late mother?
Yes. God rest her soul.
I think that's quite enough for now, Inspector.
Of course, sir. Your name, Jubilee?
Yes, she forced me to change mine. I was Albert Braithwaite. She wanted to keep her family name for the Jubilee Diamonds business as much as anything. Did the same thing with her first husband. Of course, I protested, but she is a formidable force, so Jubilee had stayed. You know women.
You also mentioned Mrs. Finnegan?
Mrs. Finnegan, yes, she's our rather loud and rather Irish house cook. She's on leave at the moment. She's a blasted nuisance, as I don't know the right way to boil an egg.
I would have thought you learned that in the army, sir.
Haven't done that for 40 years, lad. And even then, I used to get the plant life to do it for me.
Plant life?
Yes, you know, the privates. Made them feel important.
I see. Oh, well, that's enough for now, Mrs. Jubilee and Mr.
Colonel.
Colonel. I'll be in touch. After that meeting, I learned that Mrs. Jubilee had inherited the company from her late mother. I don't think Mrs. Jubilee recalled, but I had actually met her before, only briefly, issuing her a speeding ticket as she hurtled past in her E-Type one foggy Sunday morning. Another lady was in the passenger seat. It looked like they were off to tennis practice or something. I casually pulled her over, took her details and asked her to produce her licence at the station. She tried to talk her way out of it, as she said she had already had quite a collection of points on her licence, and that her and her daughter were in an emergency. But I was having none of it. I handed over the ticket, much to her annoyance, which made my day. Anyway, back to the case in hand. You see, when it comes to a case of this nature, there are three main motivations for murder. Number one, money. Number two, love or lust. And the most important of all, the deadliest, number three, a combination of both. You see, your average everyday murderer has to have a strong motivation to even contemplate such a thing. It's not weak, it's unwavering. It's dedicated to the one thing that needs to happen. The victim needs to be silenced. There's no other way. Your murderer has thought it over time and time again and has come to the ultimate conclusion that that person has to be removed. Completely. And so he or she then proceeds to work out how to do it. Now, here comes the clever part. If the murderer can then move blame or frame someone else, then they're in the clear, able to live out their lives with the person removed from the picture and another person to take the fall. Now that takes a calculating brain, a deadly disposition and a cunning that surpasses everyone. Even the police, and even a detective. So, let me continue. I then, following a lead from Mrs. Jubilee, paid a visit to Mrs. McDade, just to find out her end of the story. Mrs. McDade?
I'm on my way out.
Just a few moments of your time.
I've got to get one of the kids, see? Did you know I got 5 of the little bleeders?
Do you mind if we walk and talk?
Who are you anyway?
Oh, apologies. I'm Detective Inspector Jardin.
Oof, sounds posh. What do you want? I paid me electric.
Oh, no. It's not about that. It's about Tamara, Mrs. Stone's wedding.
Oh, that tart.
Oh, you weren't a fan, but you were her chief bridesmaid.
Yeah, we were friends until I found out she slept with my husband.
She slept with...
My husband. Silly girl. But she didn't know I knew. I worked it out, see?
How did you work it out?
I found her knickers in my biscuit tin. She used the ones with the initials TJ. Stupid bitch. She always was a bit stupid.
And this was before the wedding?
About 6 months.
6 months?
Yeah, so I thought I'd get my own back. I'd get her Dave on the dance floor and I'd show him what he'd be missing.
And why would he do this at his own wedding?
Blokes, you know, they'd do anything for a bitter. Well, you know. Anyway, he took the bait.
The bait?
Well, he came in. We started getting a little dirty. And I said she weren't for it. He liked it a bit rough, and she was too prissy, too girly. So I said he could have it, but not tonight.
So nothing happened?
No, I sent him on his way. He did call on me a couple of times, but I told him, no, divorce her and we'll see.
Did he call on you after Tamara's disappearance?
No.
Well, he possibly did more than divorce her.
Silly boy. She was a little whore, but I didn't think he'd go that far.
So you encouraged him?
Well, I might have motivated him to divorce her, but not that. I didn't think he'd do that, but he did. And I only did it to get back at her and to prove that I could do it. And I did. And he did. Oh, hello, Michelle.
Thank you for your time, Mrs. McDade. Thank you. So you see, Paula, Mrs. McDade, had possibly motivated Mr. Stone to commit murder. Had she planted a seed in his mind, a seed that would grow into a fully fledged plan, a plan to get rid of his wife, to be with Mrs. McDade? Definitely not a shy one, that one. Manipulative, clever, and extremely spiteful. To do that at her best friend's wedding, that takes a cold heart. Could she have murdered Tamara? Oh, and another thing. I asked Mrs. McDade if Mr. Stone called on her after the disappearance of Tamara. She said no. I thought that was strange. If he had murdered for love or lust, then surely he would, but she said he didn't. But I couldn't get that nagging feeling out of my head. Was she telling the whole truth? It was time to question Mr. Stone. He was in prison, but I was able to carry out a short interview with him. Mr. Stone, I'm detective.
Yeah, I know who you are.
You do?
I remember you from last time.
I see.
Yeah. You, investigated my case.
And we found you guilty.
Yeah. But I didn't do it.
Mr. Stone, the reason I'm here is some new evidence has come to light.
But I didn't do it.
But your DNA was found on some skin cells found on the rope used to strangle her.
Look, I told them at the time, I don't know anything about any rope. I'd never seen it before. I mean, they bloody... Someone framed me.
I think you've been watching too much television, Mr. Stone. Who, framed you?
But someone must have planted my DNA on that rope, alright? You would think if someone was going to do something like that, they'd wear gloves.
Yes, you would have thought, but maybe there wasn't time to fetch gloves. Maybe it was an impulse decision. The thing is, Mr. Stone, your DNA was the only DNA found around the strangle wound. That is why you are in the picture.
So why are you here then?
As I said, some new evidence has come to light. There was a chafing mark found on Tamara's wrist.
What, a watch mark?
Possibly. Is that where you grabbed her arms?
No.
Is that where you grabbed her arms to stop her from struggling?
No.
Is that where you grabbed her arms to stop her from struggling and started to strangle her?
No! Look, I told you, right? I didn't do it. I want you to get my solicitor down here, right? Angelica Pratt. You know her, best in the business.
Pity you didn't have her before. So what was this mark on her wrist? Did you want a coffee? I'm sorry, I can't offer you anything else. No? Okay, so let me continue. So I now had some more to go on. I wanted to speak to Mr. Jubilee as he had been very quiet during my early interview, and I felt that he was possibly hiding something. But first I called to speak to the accountant, just to clarify something Mrs. Jubilee had said.
Hello?
Hello, is that Miss Parrish?
Yes, speaking.
Ah, Miss Parrish. My name is Detective Jardin and I'm...
A detective? How exciting.
Well, that remains to be seen, ma'am. I just wanted to ask you a quick question.
Of course, detective, but I only have a few moments. I have a new client coming in to see me.
I will be brief. Your relationship with Mr. Stone?
It's hardly a relationship. I just did his account.
Not from what I've heard, ma'am.
I'm sorry. What have you heard?
Just that you were seeing Mr. Stone?
Inspector, I wasn't seeing Mr. Stone.
Mrs. Jubilee seems to think there was more going on in your office than just accounting.
Well, she'd say anything, that nosy bitch. She used to walk past my office and check out every man I had in the room with me. I'm sure she was eyeing them up for something not quite... Well, you know. And that daughter of hers. She's always sticking her oar into my business. She'd come by just to see her mother and then casually drop into my office unannounced while I was attending to some affluent male clients. Just like her mother, little whore. And one day she found out something else about me and she threatened to tell her mother. If she found out about me, I'd lose my job. I'd lose everything.
So you weren't having an affair then?
No, Inspector, I wasn't.
How do I know that, Mum? If you don't mind me asking.
You can ask my girlfriend.
So, that was that. Miss Parrish was a lesbian and didn't want Mrs. Jubilee to find out, as she thought that sort of behaviour was disgusting. Miss Parrish was fearful of losing her job if Mrs. Jubilee had found out. Had Tamara threatened to tell? Was that enough for her to be murdered for? I then received a letter. It had been pushed under my door. I opened it and found... well, that would be jumping the gun, wouldn't it? Nevertheless, it was time now to revisit Mr. Jubilee to ask him about the contents of the letter. Ah, Mr. Jubilee, Colonel.
Detective, back so soon?
Can I ask you a quick question?
If you must. I must see to my garden, though.
I received a letter.
Oh, good for you.
Do you know what it said?
How the bloody hell would I know?
It said, did I know that Grandma Jubilee's will was changed so Tamara would get everything and the Jubilees would get nothing?
Yes, rather casts a bad light on us, doesn't it? Gives us a motive for killing our dear daughter, doesn't it? Good job it wasn't anything to do with us.
Did you know?
Yes, I did. I overheard Tamara in her room reading a letter. We were going to the will reading that day, but Tamara was too frail to go, so we left her at home.
Maybe you didn't want her there.
Poppycock.
So the letter?
Yes, well, her grandma sent her a letter especially to explain.
Dear, dear Tamara, you have been so good to me in the last few years, coming to see me and sending me all those lovely flowers. And when I was ill in hospital a few years ago, I remember your constant visits. You are so special to me. I thought I would do something special for you. I have enclosed a copy of my last will and testament for you, as I assume that they would not let you attend.
This is the last will and testament of Jessamy Jane Jubilee. I, Jessamy Jane Jubilee, of sound mind and body, hereby announce the distribution of my wealth and estate to the following.
To my daughter, I bequeath the sum of £100 and my tea set. May she think of me every time she goes to pour a cup of tea, and remember all the times she didn't come to see me when I was ill. To my darling granddaughter, the apple of my eye, and the most loving,
caring child I have ever known, I leave to you the full contents of my estate and the ownership
in full of Jubilee diamonds.
What?
May you look after my estate with all the love and care and diligence to which you looked after me while I was suffering.
To which you looked after me while I was suffering.
Lastly,
I leave a sum of £10,000
to the local cat sanctuary.
May they look after and love the cats there like I loved my dear Fluffy up until his final day.
I hereby appoint
Mrs. Angelica
as
Pratt
my executor
as the
of my will.
executor of my will. Signed,
Jessamy Jane Jubilee, former owner of Jubilee Diamonds.
Of Jubilee Diamonds.
What?
So you knew?
Yes, I heard her. She was crying, "Grandma, I can't run Jubilee on my own. Mother will be furious. She's waited years for this. I can't." And she then ran out of her room and headed down to the lake. It was her special place. She would go there if she was upset. I read between the lines, and when I went to the will reading, I already knew. Jacqueline, Mrs. Jubilee, was furious. She shouted and screamed that it wasn't fair, it was hers, it was supposed to be all hers, her birthright. She launched at the solicitor, and we had to hold her back. Of course I knew, but I couldn't say that I did. Anyway, she came home and locked Tamara in her room for a week, only allowing Bertram, our butler, to bring her food. Tamara had been staying with us after the separation. It was horrible. Eventually, she let Tamara out, but the look of disdain and horror was still there. And every time she looks at that blasted tea set, it's a reminder. I think that's what her mother wanted to do, you see, to punish her and remind her. Well, she did, didn't she? Clever old bat.
Were you not surprised by this?
Of course I was shocked and surprised. And yes, we would be very wealthy, but I have a good life, you see, a good pension. Money isn't everything to me. But to Jacqueline, it is, you see. The company, the inheritance, the prestige. Tamara now had everything. And Jacqueline had a tea set.
I see.
You'll keep this to yourself, won't you? I have to live with her, you see, and she's lost a daughter. It's really too much.
Wait a minute, you said she's lost a daughter.
Well, yes, you see, she's not mine. Myself and Jacqueline have only been together a short time. Army life, you see, takes you all over, but it's very difficult to settle down.
I see.
So I married Jacqueline a few years ago, and her daughter came along with the package. Of course, I'm devastated with what happened, as I was just starting to get to know the girl, you see. But she wasn't mine.
Do you have a daughter?
Yes, but I haven't seen her for years. Yeah, we had a very bad falling out, you see. We are estranged. You will keep this to yourself, old chap. You see, of course, Jacqueline knows, but it's not public knowledge in the village.
Of course, it will just be between us.
Thank you. See, army training, my bark is sometimes worse than my bite.
Tamara wasn't Mr. Jubilee's daughter, so when he found out about the change of the will, would it be a relatively simple thing to do to get rid of Tamara? She wasn't his blood, he would have no ties or emotional bonding with her. Could he do it? For his wife? For the inheritance and army training? A strong and capable man? But this letter was starting to nag at me. Where had it come from? Who sent it? They must have known my address to just pop it under the door, so who was it? So, my list of suspects was growing. Mrs. Jubilee now had a motive. Mr. Jubilee was also coming into frame, but whether he was telling me the whole truth, I wasn't totally sure. Miss Parrish could have done it to stop Tamara from telling her mother about her love life. Mr. Stone's evidence was still quite damning, and there was Mrs. McDade. She wanted Mr. Stone, but couldn't have him unless Tamara was out of the way. What looked like a simple open and shut case was getting more and more complicated. And then the letter. Who had sent it? After I returned from seeing Mr. Jubilee, I started to settle in for the night when the phone rang. Hello?
Is that the detective?
Who may I say is speaking?
I can't say anything. Just meet me in the car park of the address I've just sent you.
What is it concerning?
Miss Tamara.
When?
Midnight.
That's a little bit melodramatic. Let's just say an hour.
Okay, an hour.
So who is this speaking? Hello? Hello? No number, and number withheld, which was a bit weird because I would be meeting this person soon anyway. But they wanted to stay anonymous for that moment. Although I was pretty sure who it might be because their voice was pretty obvious on the phone.
Are you on your own?
Yes, of course I am.
You didn't see me.
Well, I know not yet, but your voice is a giveaway, Mrs. Finnegan.
How did you know?
Well, you did say Tamara, then corrected to Miss Tamara. That is the way a cook in the house would address the young lady. And Mrs. Jubilee did mention your name and possibly the accent.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I have news about Miss Tamara.
Go on.
Poor lamb. Didn't deserve that. A bit precocious at times, but not that.
Do. Go on.
I overheard a conversation in the study. Mrs. Jubilee was talking on the phone.
Angelica? Jacqueline, lovely to hear from you. So sorry about the ghastly news today. I was utterly flabbergasted.
Well, you can imagine how I feel. And I'm so sorry I flew at you.
Utterly understandable. You were in shock.
I was. I still am.
After all those years, and she leaves everything to that ghastly child.
I know. Angelica?
Jacqueline?
Is there any way this could be changed? I mean, she can't have had all her marbles when she changed the will. She started to lose them years ago.
I am so sorry, Jacqueline.
Couldn't we make some sort of arrangement?
I have taken another look at the will, and it was signed by her and witnessed by the matron of the home. She was, in fact, of sound mind and body when she made the changes. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do.
Nothing at all? Can I not contest the will?
You could. But as I said, she was in sound mind and body.
Oh, bloody woman!
Unless...
Yes?
Just a moment, Jacqueline.
Peter, what the bloody hell are you doing?
Rats, darling. We have rats in the wine cellar.
We have rats in the wine cellar.
Use the rat poison. Just don't drink it yourself.
Very well.
Chance would be a fine thing. So, as I was saying, the other possibility is that you assume guardianship of your daughter and hence controlling rights. If she were to become incapacitated or ill or...
Oh, I see. And what about that ghastly husband of hers? They are starting divorce proceedings.
Well, as it stands, he would be entitled to share in the wealth until the divorce is completed. After that, he would be entitled to nothing. Although I would have to check if there is a prenup agreement.
Could you do that for me, darling? Oh, and Angelica, could you get Peter to run something over to me? Thank you, dear.
So did this thing get delivered?
It did. It was in a small box, but I didn't see inside.
Thank you, Mrs. Finnegan.
Shh! Don't mention my name.
After what Mrs. Finnegan said, I figured the letter had come from her telling me about the will. I felt sure the case was closing, but I needed to speak to someone else first. Someone who had been in the house, but on the night I visited was nowhere to be seen. What the butler saw. I needed to speak to Bertram. But first I made a call to Angelica Pratt. I wanted to know about the prenup agreement. Hello?
Hi.
Oh, good morning. Could I possibly speak to Mrs. Pratt, please? Angelica Pratt?
I'm so sorry. She's out.
Oh, could you possibly help me?
Depends.
On what?
Well, it depends if I can help. I'm new here. It's my first day. I'm Dawn.
Oh, hello, Dawn. I wonder if you can help me find out some information about Tamara Jubilee.
Tamara. I know her. She was a bitch to me at school. Kept locking me in the toilet.
Oh, I see.
And she used to nick my dinner money. Could have strangled her.
I see.
Didn't she get done in?
Yes, she was done in. Actually, she was strangled.
Awkward.
But I wanted to find out whether she had a prenup agreement arranged.
The what?
A prenup agreement? An arrangement with her husband as to how their wealth would be split if one of them was done in.
Hang on.
Right.
T-A-M. Got it.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, there was one. In the event of Tamara Jubilee passing, the agreement is that all her worldly wealth would pass to her nearest surviving blood relative, who at this time is Mrs. Jacqueline Jubilee.
Really?
Now, is that it? I think I've got a hair appointment in 5 minutes at Zambrini's. I'm having a babblage.
Right, no, that would be all for now. You've been most helpful. Interesting. Now, Mr. Bertram, what's your story? Mr. Bertram?
Yes?
Oh, sorry, have I come at a bad time?
It's always a bad time.
I'm so sorry, sir. I'm Detective Inspector Jardin. I've got a few questions about Tamara Jubilee.
Oh, yes, Miss poor Tamara.
You knew her well?
Yes, very well. Sometimes I was the only one that she could talk to.
Why's that then?
She had a hell of a time with that man. When she returned home, she was broken.
The separation hit that bad?
She found out he was seeing someone else on the night of her wedding.
So, she knew about Paula?
She found the note that Paul had put in his pocket. About some secret rendezvous. It doesn't take a detective to work out what happened next. That bloke. What a bastard. The way he treated Tamara. I could have given her so much more with his flashy motor and his sickening smile and, well...
wait a minute. Your accent, it's fake. Is it really Bertram?
It's just an act, really, isn't it? Just to get myself some jobs, you know? Well, I'm Bert Ramsbottom. But they're not going to give me a job with a name like that, are they? So, well, I just sort of changed it.
Very wise. Did anything else strange happen around the house at this time?
Mrs. Jubilee had making loads of sly phone calls. And this one day, I did see her going to Tamara's bedroom. She came out a few minutes later, letter in her hand. Of course, I didn't see who it was from, because the front was blank, but, well, then she turned into this woman obsessed, started smashing all her ornate vases. And then she saw me and asked me to tidy it up, so, well, I didn't say nothing, of course. But her mood had changed massively. Then she wrapped something up and asked me to post it. Well, said it was something for Mr. Stone. Wanted a new pair of gloves and an old black balaclava. I just nodded and posted it, but the wrapping got caught as I was putting a postage on it, and there was a pair of black gloves. They looked a bit old because there was a scratch on them where there was some material missing.
Black gloves? And Mr. Jubilee, anything strange about his behaviour?
No, he's all army-fied, you know. When he tells you to do something, it feels like he's giving you an order. Of course, I just do as I'm told, but, well, he did have a conversation with I think an old army friend. And the conversation ended, well, we should do it for Queen and Country and us. Well, I thought it was a bit weird.
Anything else?
Well, there was a stranger come to the house. But, well, nah, nothing really. I just don't know how much longer I'm going to keep working for him, you know? With, well, Miss Tamara gone, it's just too painful.
You loved her?
Is it that obvious?
Only to a detective. Thank you, Mr. Bertram. You've been very helpful. You see, unrequited love, or love that is not reciprocated, can be as powerful a weapon as actually receiving love. It can force people to do things they would never do, to apportion blame, and even in some cases, they would remove the unrequited love interest completely just to ease the pain. Bertram was in pain. He tried to hide it, but I could tell, and there was no love lost between him and Mr. Stone. Could he have done it? He was a big man, strength wouldn't have been an issue, but could he kill his love? But something else was niggling at me. I needed to know. I returned to see Mr. Jubilee.
Again, Inspector?
I just want to clear a few things up. Is Mrs. Jubilee in the house?
Not at present. Probably tending to her bloody horses.
Can I ask you something?
Depends what it is.
The night you heard about the letter.
Yes?
How was Mrs. Jubilee?
Well, she was in a foul mood.
Did she say anything?
Not really. I did hear her talking to Tamara through the door. It's very odd.
Oh, can you remember what was said?
Well, it's very strange. She had a cup of tea in her hand and was knocking on the door.
Tamara, dear,
I'm not talking to you.
I have a cup of tea for you.
I don't want tea.
It'll make you feel better.
I don't want to feel better.
Well, I'll just leave it here then.
I've seen you, you know, with that man.
What man, dear?
That man. Coming out of your bedroom.
Bedroom?
Yes, and it didn't look like father to me. I know all about you.
You're delirious, dear. You have been for a few days. Just lie down and get some sleep. And don't forget to drink your tea.
So this tea...
It was full when she left it, and then a few moments later it was still there. It looked like only a sip had been taken. Jacqueline took it back and just tipped it into the sink. She looked forlorn. Very unusual look for her. And then the strangest thing. She knocked on the door about an hour later and said, "Tamara, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine, Mother," came the response. "If I hadn't known better, I would have said it was almost maternal."
The thing is, Mr. Jubilee, there was rat poison found in her bloodstream.
Dear
Not enough to
God.
do any damage, but as Tamara had only taken a few sips of the tea, it had no effect. It is plausible that Mrs. Jubilee meant to do her harm, but then decided against it, had second thoughts. Rat poison is not good for you, but doesn't kill unless administered in quite large amounts.
I was almost there. The net was closing in on someone. I decided to pay Bertram another visit.
Oh, I'm so sorry to disturb you, Bertram.
Bert'll do.
You mentioned something in passing. You said a stranger came to the house?
Well, not really. It was just, I come downstairs and saw Miss Jubilee and someone, and then I heard her say, she's probably gone down the lake. She saw me and said, I thought I'd given you the day off. She seemed flustered.
So, what else did you see?
I didn't see them, but just a flash and a car door slam. And then I asked her, I said to her, is there anything the matter? And she just dismissed me. But I didn't think nothing of it because she's always upsetting someone. But well, this time she seemed a little bit upset herself.
Upset? How do you mean?
Well, she seemed sort of quieter, more sort of thoughtful, as if she'd sort of come to a decision and weren't sure if it was the right one.
So, could you describe them?
No, not really, but actually, they seemed a bit the same height as you, but to someone like me, everyone's the same height.
Oh, yes, us smaller people must look a bit different to you. All the same, you mentioned a him. You sure it was a him?
Well, it could have been a woman. They had a hat on. It was so quick, but I didn't really see and I weren't really looking.
I left Bertram to consider this stranger, but the pieces were coming together. Ooh, it's getting a bit chilly in here. That evening, it was bucketing it down, and Colin popped round after work for a chat and a beer and brought with him some photographs. Something else had washed up by the side of the lake.
He showed me a picture of a fitness tracker and the initials TJ that had been carved into the side. TJ, Tamara Jubilee. Colin was convinced the fitness tracker and the markings matched the mark on Tamara's wrist. As it was raining heavily and Colin, being Colin, wasn't prepared, I lent him my coat to save him from being drowned. I was given access to search Mr. Stone's flat again. Quite a modern building, suited to his style, the sort of place to bring women to woo them and then to give them a taxi fare home. Or not, as the case may be. I was looking for something to either prove him innocent or put it beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was him. I was only in there about 10 minutes when I found what I was looking for. Behind the second drawer, there was a hole. This hole looked like it had been cut out to hide things. The package, the hat, and the gloves. I looked over the gloves and saw a small cut which Bertram had mentioned. I was careful, I had my gloves on. I tore off a small piece of the material from the glove, just enough, just a small strand, and popped it into an evidence bag. I was sure this was the evidence I needed. It was him. Now, I wasn't sure if Mrs. Jubilee had put him up to it, but I was sure. I set out to disprove his case, but instead ended up proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that it actually was him. He had murdered his ex-wife, knowing that until their divorce was final, he would inherit her share of the business. He was guilty. I thought I would pay him a final visit.
Mr. Stone?
You again?
Yeah, it's me again. I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
More bad news? Can't get much worse, can it?
Well, I'm afraid it can. These photographs have been sent to me. Do you recognise them?
No.
Let me enlighten you. This is a fitness tracker found by the side of the lake. This fitness tracker has the initials TJ engraved on the side. TJ, Tamara Jubilee. Do you recognise them?
Well, I know she had one.
So you're saying this is hers?
Probably. Must have come off in the struggle.
And this black fibre was found under her fingernails?
What the hell is this? I told you, I didn't do it. You're supposed to be proving me innocent.
No, I'm here to investigate the new evidence, Mr. Stone. I'm not here to prove you innocent.
I am innocent.
Gloves. Black gloves. Does that mean anything to you?
Black gloves? No. Unless... Well, you mean the ones that Jacqueline sent to me?
Possibly.
What about them?
Do you notice anything unusual about them?
No, they're gloves.
At the murder scene, a small fragment of cloth was found, a small fragment of black fibre that was found under her fingernails. Tamara must have grabbed you while you were trying to strangle her and scratched off part of your gloves. You strangled her, Mr. Stone. You found out she was inheriting a fortune and strangled her to make sure you received it, as you were, at that time, still married. Your divorce hadn't been settled. If you had divorced, you would have been entitled to nothing, according to the prenup agreement. You had to do it quickly. You followed her, wrapped the rope around her neck and strangled her. It was you, Mr. Stone, just you.
I was on my way to wrap up the case when I got a call from Colin. He'd found something interesting about the tracker and asked to meet me at the site where the body was found. I made a quick phone call and left the office.
I don't know what he wants. He just wanted to meet me here.
Well, I'm not letting you speak to him on your own.
Oh, just stay here.
Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on him.
Thank you, Mrs. Finnegan.
Okay, Colin. I'll be here. I'll see you soon. Oh, and can you bring my coat? Thanks. Oh, Mrs. Jubilee. It's good to revisit the scene of the crime.
Why did you want to see me, Thomas?
To explain.
To explain what?
You deserved your inheritance, not her. I'm sorry.
Sorry? Sorry for... You?
Yes.
Why? Was it the money?
We had a deal to split the inheritance.
No, we didn't. I only said that to get rid of you.
But you were so angry after the will reading. I thought you wanted something done.
Not this.
But Jacqueline!
What the bloody hell's going on here? He called you Jacqueline. Wait, you knew each other?
You knew each other before he came to the house.
Tamara!
Bloody hell, I ought to... Please, Mr. Jubilee. I've had a call. The police are on the way. It's over. Well, time's getting on and we really should wrap this up. Oh, this? Oh, this is mine. You see, she recognised me. Like I said before, number one reason for murder is money, number two is love or lust, and number three, the deadliest combination, money and lust. My business relationship with Mrs. Jubilee had been going on for a while. It started soon after her speeding incident when I was just an officer.
I don't think Mrs. Jubilee recalled, but I had actually met her before, only briefly, issuing her a speeding ticket as she hurtled past in her E-Type one foggy Sunday morning.
You see, one more driving infraction and she could face a ban or even court, not to mention she was also over the limit. She tried to buy me off, so we came to an arrangement. In exchange for me ignoring this offence, she would give me a large sum of money. She acted like she didn't know me at our interview, but she nearly gave it away by calling me officer.
I'm very sorry, officer.
Inspector now, Mum.
Inspector.
I managed to cover it up and she carried on unnerved. Her acting, as she was professional, was, as I would expect, impeccable. Mr. Jubilee didn't suspect at all that we actually knew each other. When I came to collect, she said she didn't have the money, but she would be inheriting a fortune from her late mother and promised to share it with me after she had divorced her husband. I thought this was worth the wait and had started to care about her. My mistake. The day of the will reading, everything changed. Mrs. Jubilee was left with nothing and her ungrateful, vindictive daughter would get everything. She was furious.
I did see her going to Tamara's bedroom. She came out a few minutes later, a letter in her hand. Of course, I didn't see who it was from, because the front was blank, but, well, then she turned into this woman obsessed, started smashing all her ornate vases.
She spoke to her solicitor friend after the will reading, and after a chance mention of rat poison...
Use the rat poison. Just don't drink it yourself.
We came up with a plan to make Tamara ill so that Jacqueline would gain controlling rights of the inheritance. She didn't want to hurt Tamara, just to be able to control her. After a while of doing this, her motherly instincts kicked in, so she stopped putting rat poison in her daughter's tea.
She knocked on the door about an hour later and said, "Tamara, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine, Mother," Kayla responds. "If I hadn't known better, I would have said it was almost maternal."
I wouldn't be getting anything at this rate. I knew I had to act. I came up with the plan to get Tamara out of the way and to frame Mr. Stone for doing it. I went to see Mrs. Jubilee and nearly got caught by the butler, who was supposed to be having the night off. You mentioned something in passing. You said a stranger came to the house?
Actually, I seemed a bit the same height as you, but to someone like me, everyone's the same height.
I was seen by Tamara.
I've seen you, with that man.
What man, dear?
That man. Coming out of your bedroom.
Tamara was in the car the day I met her mother, and that her and her daughter were in an emergency. And I was sure she recognised me. I panicked. She could blow the whole thing. I couldn't take any chances. I followed her down to the lake the next day and finished her off, making sure to leave the rope as evidence that someone else had committed the crime if the body was found. As I was dragging the body into the lake, I was disturbed, so had to dump it quick. So I just pushed it in, hoping it would sink. It must have drifted for a few days until it was discovered, but I had a plan if that were to happen. As soon as the body was found, I had to act fast. As I said, I was on the team who discovered the body.
Well, I was on the team that discovered the body, and we arrested her husband for doing it, as we found his DNA on some skin cells left on the rope that had been used to strangle her.
The first person under suspicion would be the husband, so while I was investigating Mr. Stone's flat, I took a sample of his skin cells from a door handle and planted them on the rope before it went to forensics. It was fairly easy to do as I had access to the evidence, and it was enough to incriminate him. The gloves that I got Mrs. Jubilee to send were slightly torn, and so it'd be believable that he had used the gloves but still transferred the skin cells and his DNA.
Wanted a new pair of gloves and an old black balaclava. I just nodded and posted it, but the wrapping got caught as I was putting a postage on it, and there was a pair of black gloves. They looked a bit old because there was a scratch on them where there was some material missing.
Also, the fact that he would inherit her fortune if she passed sealed the deal, despite the fact that they still couldn't identify where this black fibre had come from.
And what about the black strand of cloth?
No match so far. I'll keep looking.
Are you keeping up? Oh, your viewers are going to love this. Colin couldn't let it go. His unwavering duty to the truth drove him to get the case reopened, to take another look at the evidence and to identify this black fibre. When I was assigned back to the case, I knew I had to keep control of it. I did my duty visiting the various suspects as I was looking for someone else with a strong enough motive to pin it on. Eventually, I had to pin it back on Mr. Stone. Thinking that this black fibre must have come from my gloves, I visited his place and took a sample from his gloves and swapped it with mine, so it would look like the sample we had in evidence came from his pair. This was too easy. I could pin it back on Stone and they would never reopen the case again. That's what I thought. Until the fitness tracker turned up. I knew it had come off in the struggle, but when I went back to find it, it was nowhere to be seen. I assumed it had got lost or swept into the lake until it turned up, and an honest passerby turned it in at the station. Everyone thought it was hers at first, seeing as it had the initials TJ engraved on it and the mark on her wrist. But it wasn't. It was mine.
Oh, is that Tom?
Hello, mate.
Not heard from you since you got your promotion.
I know. Inspector now.
The night Colin popped round for a beer and a chat to show me the photographs of the tracker was the beginning of the end. You see, Colin, ever vigilant Colin, had found mine and Tamara's fingerprints on the tracker. He wanted to borrow my coat to see if he could match the black fibres to it, but I'd left my scarf in the pocket. He noticed a small pull in the scarf where some fibres had been scratched off. The fibres from the scarf and from what was found under her fingernails were a match. Colin called me and told me what he'd found and asked to meet me at the murder site, along with calling the police. Very thorough is our Colin.
Boy, you. Lights out. You got a big move tomorrow.
Yeah. Suppose I'd better get some shut-eye. This is just a holding cell, although at least it has a window. Hopefully the new place will have one too. And also be quiet. I like it quiet. Gives me time to think. Oh, you better get out before they shut you in. Now, you're probably wondering why I've told you all this. Well, I thought your viewers would like a good story. And it's a bit of fun, isn't it? Passes the time. Actually, cut that bit. Time for bed. You know, when I was younger, I used to spend all day reading while sitting under this big tree in our garden. I loved our garden. I would dream of one day being a great detective. And my mother, she was French, you know, she said,
Que fais-tu ici tout seul? Tu lis tous tes livres de détective? Tu veux être détective quand tu seras grand? Il te faudra changer de nom. Thomas Sobrage. Peut-être pas le meilleur nom si tu veux être du côté droit de la loi. Que dirais-tu de Jardin ou Jardin? Thomas Jardin. Ah, ça sonne bien. C'est français pour jardin.
She was a clever woman. Yeah, I thought I was clever. Turns out, I'm not quite as clever as I thought.
Love, some call it hate. With the feeling of repression, it's been running through my veins. I'm feeling it. feeling of intent. The feeling of regret is eating me instead. The lady in the lake, so still and calm and numb, the devil's right, I'm drunk when all is said and done. The weight is off my head. The lady in the lake.